Hi, this is Melissa Muir. Today I'm going to demonstrate the Potter USA silhouette dies using his contained urethane and pusher system. This is a 2-inch contained urethane system that he sells on their website. It's at www.potterusa.com. We have a steel container. We have a steel pusher, which is about 1.5 inches tall and again 2 inches wide. We have a piece of 95 durometer urethane, so this is probably your strongest one that you can get. Again, 2 inches round and approximately maybe 1 inch or so tall. Not very big. You don't want it to be too big anyway. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this in conjunction with the silhouette dies. These are the 2-inch silhouette dies. He also has a larger set of 3-inch dies, and the concept and the way that those work are just the same. One thing that you do want to do when you use one of these dies is you want to prep that, and that's by breaking the edge, because they come with a pretty sharp edge on these and they'll shear right through your metal. So spend a little time, go back to my YouTube channel. You're probably already here. If not, you can go to YouTube and look for my channel. My tag there is KC Jewel Box. And I do have a demonstration on how to prep your silhouette dies. Okay, so in order to work with this, you have to have your metal so that it will actually fit into the silhouette container. If not, then what you need to do is spend a little time, cut that down so that it will fit into there. One of the things that I like to do is use a pancake die that Kevin has on his website for a 2-inch circle. Makes nice easy work of it. Punch that out, anneal it, and you're ready to go. These I have textured up. That has hardened these quite a bit as well. So I spent a little time preparing my copper as well, and took a torch to them, annealed it, pickled it, cleaned it back up so that we're now soft and ready to go with this. If you need to know how to anneal your metal, please check out my video on annealing metal. In this case, my metal is a little bit too thick to fit into my container. So what I'm going to do is use my die as a template. Just going to take a Sharpie and quickly go around my die to mark where I really need to cut this, or how much of it I need to cut off. You can see there's just a little bit there. And then I'm just going to use some shears, go around, trim that down a little bit. Really, mine wasn't too far off. I could have just filed in a couple of areas, but I'll go ahead and trim this down and we'll be ready to go. I wanted to point out really quickly that you don't always need such a large piece of copper to go in with your silhouette dies here. In this case, I'm going to be using this heart, and since it is a little larger shape, it made sense for me to use a piece that was pretty much the same size as the die. However, there are other shapes that are much smaller. In this case, I could have gotten away with cutting this even in half and then placing it onto my opening and then pressing. If you are going to do that, you want to make certain that you have at least 1/8 of an inch, preferably 1/4 of an inch, all the way around your piece. And the reason for that is because as your metal stretches, it's going to get pulled in, and sometimes you'll actually pull that edge all the way in there. Now, another thing, if I'm going to use a smaller piece, I usually take a piece of painter's tape or double stick tape and then secure my metal onto my die as well. And that will help ensure that things stayed centered and that they also don't bring that edge into my shape here and I run off the edge of that. Okay, so I'm ready to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stack everything. So I begin by taking my urethane. I'm going to take my die with the prepared surface up. You don't want to put your prepared surface down at the bottom because then you're not going to work as efficiently. So I'll go ahead and just drop that into my die. Because my metal is about the same size as my piece, I don't need to worry about the placement of this or anything like that. I'm going to place my design side down so that this puffs out when I get my piece all ready. So again, I'm just going to go ahead, stack that in there on top of that. Next that goes in is my urethane. and finally my pusher. And now I'm ready to take this over to my hydraulic press, put it in, and we'll begin to puff our shape. Here I've already raised my platform a little bit just so that I didn't have to spend so much of the movie time raising the platen. Going to go ahead, put this in here, make sure everything is nice and centered, and I'm going to begin to raise that platen back up again. Now here you can watch your pressure, and that's, if you have a gauge, you are going to be able to get repeatable results if you have multiples of these to run. If not, you're going to kind of go by feel and by listening, and you may have to go through a couple of these before you get to the exact results that you're looking for. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come in and press on this until I hit about 2,000 pounds. And I actually just heard that metal shear through. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit more pressure to kind of show you what I mean by having the metal shear. And I don't know if you heard that pop or not, but it was the metal actually cutting on the sharp edges of that heart. So I've got this up to just a little more than 2,000 pounds of pressure. Going to release the pressure on the jack and pull out my piece. Take everything all out here. Now here I can see that I've got a lovely shape. I absolutely love this. And the texture looks wonderful. I didn't lose any of my texture. But one of the things I want to show you here in the back, you'll see that I actually popped the shape. Okay, where it's begun to cut along those sharp edges of the die. And this is even with me knocking those sharp edges off and preparing my die for this. But we do have this where it is now kind of cut out. That's not always a bad thing. When I was first learning to use a press, I was always told you shouldn't press too much because you're going to cut this out. Things that happen with this, one, you get a perfectly cut out shape, which is kind of nice, but a lot of times there is distortion and you'll also bottom out. So you want to kind of play around with that, be a little bit careful, experiment a little bit. Okay, in my last example, I put about 2,000 pounds of pressure and I cut through the shape. I actually have a different shape that I'm going to work with on this one. It's a trillion. And this time, maybe I'll stop a little bit before 2,000. And you can also tell when you're getting to a pressure that you know you're going to cut through because it's going to take a lot more pressure and effort. You can see that I'm using two hands here to push on this. So at this point, I'm pushing pretty hard. I'm going to go ahead and stop with the pressure and release the pressure. And let's see what we have at this point. But I don't want to go too far because this time I don't want to cut through because I do want to leave a flange that I can use as a design element. Now in this case, I actually have my shape that's stuck in here because I did not cut down my copper piece. So give me a second and I will work this out of there and we'll go on from there. Alright, good couple knocks on the counter and then out it came. So in this case, you'll see that I have a nice pressed shape. Okay, beautiful. Everything is, I've got nice crisp edges here, but I have not cut through this. So what I would be able to do now is use this flange as a decorative element. Now here, the flange is actually pretty large. I can cut that down, I can cut into it. The possibilities are endless with this. But in this case, I went up to about 1,500 pounds, maybe about 1,800. So not quite to 2,000. Didn't cut through, which was exactly what I wanted. And you just have to experiment. If I want a deeper shape than this, then what I would do at this point is I would go back over to my torch. I would anneal this, pickle it, clean it back up, bring it back, and go through the process again. And what that would allow me to do is further enhance or draw this shape and puff it more. For my final piece, I'm going to do a piece of aluminum. Now this one I cannot push too far because of the perforations in the material itself. I have a lot of weak spots. So this one I might only puff to about 1,000 pounds and then check it before I continue to press. Okay, I did about 1,000 pounds and you'll see that I don't have a super tall shape. It's not super high or anything like that, but I was able to keep this from going through or cutting through. Okay, now if I needed to have a higher dome on this, I would go back, anneal it, and then come back and continue to puff. Now, I did one a little earlier where I went up to about 2,000 pounds. you'll see I have a much higher dome on this one. See if I can get that there. Okay, but one of the things that also happened is it broke through. Okay, you might be able to see that right here. Okay, so I did actually break through this, and again, that a lot of that is because I have a weaker material that I'm using because of all the perforations. So I would love to tell you the trick to it, but really you have to go by feel. It is a lot of fun though, and it allows you to have a lot of depth and dimension in your pieces. Happy pressing!